what we avoid in life has already caught us. And so I want to talk about in this video the importance of facing your fears, facing your pain, facing your adversities, and facing whatever you've been allowing yourself to avoid and run away from for so long. Some of you guys, it's been sitting alone with yourself and actually facing your thoughts. Some of you guys, it's been facing your insecurity. Some of you guys, is facing your pain that you have yet to acknowledge and that you've been ignoring and trying to suppress. And, I think a lot of you guys don't realize the impact of what avoiding a lot of these things do to you and how it actually impacts you as a person and how it, dictates the actions you take in life. I once was a person who used to avoid conflict. I would avoid hard conversations if I thought it meant losing certain people. And what I realized is that started to control my life. Allowing my fears and avoiding avoiding pain, avoiding conflict, avoiding tough situations, it dictated my actions. And so I would act from a place of, oh, I don't want to face this fear. I would act from a place of, oh, I'm going to suppress my feelings because I don't want to lose this person. I'm going to act from a place of, oh, I won't speak up about this because I want to avoid conflict and I want to keep the peace and stuff like that. And really that just ended up, causing my own internal suffering, but also, it had a control over me. I was reading a book one time and it was talking about how avoiding suffering in itself is suffering. Avoiding pain in itself is painful. Avoiding our problems in life essentially is just creating more problems. When you try and avoid your suffering, that's suffering because it's holding you back a lot of the times from the things that you actually want. Let's say we have a dream. Let's say we have a vision for ourselves, but we're so scared of failure. We're so scared of what other people are going to think and things like that. And so we see our dream, we see our vision, and let's say we want to go after it, but we have all these other different things that we're worried about if we actually take the actions and the steps to actually go after it. And so internally, we feel like we're betraying ourselves because we're not going after what we want. But on the other side, us trying to avoid facing the reality that we're afraid to face, it's really just keeping us away from what we want for ourselves. And so either way, you're either going to face the thing you're avoiding, which is that fear, which is that discomfort, or you're going to hold yourself back in fear and still go through suffering and still face discomfort. It's more so, do you want to face the feelings and the discomfort of going after what you want in life, or do you want to face the feelings and go through the discomfort of holding yourself back in life and staying in a place in which you don't want to be? And I think it's also important to realize that what we avoid builds up. So let's just picture that we're running away from our problems. And so every problem we face in life, we're dodging and we're avoiding them. And then they're just stacking up behind us. And it's like, let's just picture we're running and there's a brick wall behind us that's just closing us. That's like basically chasing after us. And as we drop everything behind us, it's just building up more and more on the wall. And so it's like let's picture on Toy Story when that little trash thing was like just kind of collecting all the trash and pushing them towards the thing. Like, you have to realize that that's what's happening when you avoid all these different things, all your pain, all your problems, everything basically that you're trying to avoid. You look back and it's building up behind you, and it's just a big wall that's like stacking up everything you've ever avoided, and it's just like closing you in and more. And eventually we have to realize that in life we have no more room to run. Eventually we have to face the pain. Eventually we have to face our fears. Eventually we have to face the discomforts and the different conflicts. And when we took so long to actually face them, it becomes way harder to face because they've all built up and they all compound down on us all at once. Rather than, hey, if I have this problem, I could just face it head on. That's one problem. That's two problems. That's a couple problems. I could face this one fear rather than everything just coming at you full force at once. And you're pretty much incapable of handling it all at once. You're incapable of, you're not strong enough to handle it. And that's where people like spiral in life. That's where people break down and stuff like that. I think a lot of you guys have to realize that you're stronger than you probably think. A lot of us are stronger than we think because we faced things in our past where we didn't have the emotional maturity, or we didn't have the emotional intelligence, or we just didn't have the knowledge to be able to solve the problem or the conflict in which we were facing, whether that was as a child, whether that was in middle school, whatever. And so we automatically, as we get older, we look back on those situations, and it might be, hop in front of a camera. It might be insecurity within us. It might be our fear of talking on stage. We automatically assume that since this happened in the past, since I wasn't strong enough in the past to face this thing, I'm still not strong enough now. And so we're essentially reliving in our head that problem that we faced in the past when we weren't strong enough, and we automatically assume that, we still can't face it. And what I've had to realize is that when you place yourself in certain situations, you realize that you're stronger than you previously were. It's like you've built yourself up and you've grown in life, and you become a better you, and you don't realize that as you become a better you enable yourself to be able to take on more. And so you can't allow yourself to live off your past results or live off past feelings and things like that and allow them to dictate your actions in the present moment, because you're capable of going through that situation. You're capable of overcoming it. You're capable of getting through it. And like I said in previous videos, you need to build trust within yourself to know that you're capable of figuring it out and moving forward from that situation, knowing that it's not the end of the world, or that it doesn't end your life, or that it doesn't mean that you're going to go in this downward spiral, that you're capable of handling the worst case scenario if it even presents itself. Because when you avoid conflict, then you're suppressing yourself, then you're suppressing your feelings. You're not speaking up for yourself, like I talked about in the previous video about speaking your truth, speaking what's real to you, expressing your emotions, expressing your feelings. But if you're so afraid of conflict, you avoiding that conflict is then just causing an internal conflict, because when you're suppressing yourself, when you're not speaking your truth, and when you're holding yourself back. And then we could go, okay, you fear making mistakes, you fear being wrong, you fear not being perfect, essentially. And so in fearing those things, you only place yourself in situations where you feel you can get it right, you feel that you have it all figured out. And what that does is make you tippy-toe through life, make you walk on eggshells, because you're always trying to make the right decision. You're always trying to get everything right. You're afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid of failure because you haven't formed the right perception around it, or you haven't learned how to deal with failure and making mistakes. And it also just limits your growth, because you're just going to keep yourself in your comfort zone and never step into the unknown where you don't have full control over it. At least you feel you don't have full control over it. And then we can go over to avoiding pain. How a lot of you guys avoid pain and have probably self-sabotaged yourself in certain areas because you were afraid of the end results. I hear a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm expecting the worst case scenario to happen in this relationship or in this friendship, because that's all that seemingly ever happened to me. And so, sometimes people try and either avoid the situation, or they try to get out of it before what they think is going to comes to them. So they try and basically end relationships or get out of harm's way before the harm is actually even there, because they assume that I'd rather avoid the hurt rather than having to face it. And so they end up self-sabotaging because they make the pre-assumption that the worst case scenario, or that the worst is basically about to come. A lot of you guys also have to realize that what you avoid doesn't go away. A lot of people think that when they get out of relationships or something hurts them, and they think, oh, I can just ignore it, or I can just I can just doom scroll on my phone, or I could just stay busy, I could just find all of these distractions. That doesn't heal you as a person. I hate it when people say time heals. Time doesn't heal. Time literally just suppresses until it gets triggered again. So the next time you get in that relationship, or the next time somebody pushes that button, the next time somebody presents something that you fear, or presents conflict to you, it's just going to bring up all those triggers from the past. It's just going to bring up all those emotions from the past that you never handled. It's like, just because you bury them doesn't mean they're necessarily dead. It's like you can't dead something until you learn how to manage it, until you learn how to face it, until you learn how to embrace it. Because sometimes that's what you have to do. Certain things are inevitable in life. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable. Conflict's inevitable. Challenges, adversities. These are things we just literally have to face on a day-to-day basis sometimes. But if you try your hardest to avoid them, then you'll always just be in a state of suffering, and you'll always be running from them, and you'll really just be causing damage to yourself. So it's important that you learn how to change your relationship to them, understanding that Hey, my mistakes, I'm able to learn from them. I'm able to grow from them. Hey, my adversities, I'm able to overcome them, even if they knock me down temporarily. Sometimes you got to go back to the drawing board and become more knowledgeable of certain things and then face it again. Certain fears, you have to understand that fear is what builds you. Fear is what makes you a stronger person. When you're able to face your fears and put yourself into uncomfortable situations, that's how you become comfortable with those new situations. That's how you expand your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is always going to be the small circle. And until you step out of it into situations that are unknown, that are unfamiliar, that are uncomfortable, essentially, that you don't know how, like I've said in previous videos, know how to manage. You don't know what all to expect. You don't all know what's going to happen and stuff like that. Like, you're stepping into the unknown. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, in a vulnerable space, basically. And so you have to put yourself in those spaces in order to expand your comfort zone and be able to take on more in life. Like, the more fears you face, the better and the more growth you see within yourself, because you expand your capabilities, you expand your knowledge, you expand what you're capable of taking on and what you're capable of handling in life. You become a lot more resilient. You're really just building your strength. It's like, I can't expect to be a power lifter. I can't expect to ever bench 225 or lift 225 in the gym if all I ever do is stay in my comfort zone of lifting 25 pounds. If I always stay in my comfort zone of benching 145 or whatever, or 135, whatever 245s is. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you got to break out of your comfort zone and out of your norm in order to be able to build up, in order to be able to become stronger for more, in order to be able to take on more in life. But as long as you keep yourself within that box, avoiding the unknown, avoiding those uncomfortable situations, avoiding those feelings that you don't want to feel, then you can never really expect to grow in life, and you can always expect a life of suffering because you can't avoid the inevitable. But I appreciate you guys for tuning into the video. I hope you learned a thing or two. Hoodies will be out soon, and be sure to also join up on our private self-discovery community. That's going to be the first thing in the description down below. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notices. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.